Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week for Friday, October 29th. Thanks so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to do these every Friday morning, well, morning for me, and sit down and look at some poems, like a workshop would. The whole point of these, as always, if you're new here, is to give that workshop experience to people who might not have access to MFA programs or a good group of friends to meet with every month or whatever. And so we're trying to give feedback on poems. People always ask me if I can give feedback as an editor on submissions, and I really can't because there's just so many submissions to go through. But we can look at a few poems every week on the Critique of the Week, and you can learn the kind of things I would say if I were giving feedback. Plus, you can learn what other people say about your poems. So it's really good to know what strangers think and how they encounter, what's working and what's not. And so please do share those comments below. And at the end of the show, we're going to do a live drawing for the next month's participants, or at least half of them. We always do a random drawing for one of the two slots, and then I pick some for balance, the other person. So that's how we do two poets every week. If you'd like to submit your own poems for critique, all you have to do is go to our submittable page, and there's a Critique of the Week form. It's free to enter. You just have to wait for your turn. We do 2 poets a week, so sign up now. Perfect timing there. Okay, let's dive into the first poem, and these are completely fresh, so I'm looking at these as I would a submission if it was just showing up in my queue. I didn't have a chance to look at these poems this morning. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, so I have no idea what we're coming up with here, but this is by Feby Joseph, these first 2 poems, and let's dive right in. Okay, here we go. So, I think that, hang on one second. I think I might have bumped the camera, and now it's out of focus. So, there we go. That's probably better. Okay. And, let me make sure the comments are working. Yeah, so D. Coleman's here, and James Langford, hello. Anita Larrick, good to see you. Okay, and then over on Facebook, we've got Nate Jacob and Lois Perch Villamere, Susan Manchin, Sharon Ferrante, Rachel Leah, Kimberly McNeil, Fran Smith from Wales. Good to see you from Wales, Fran. And here we go. Let's dive into this poem. This is Mumbai Damam Winter. December comes suddenly, like Wuthering Heights, 1801, right into the second week. Morning starts like a shot. Chilled winds, not like damam. I have to look up that word so we know what it means. I think is it a place? It's the 6th most populous city in Saudi Arabia. Dammam. Okay. Or maybe Dammam. Yeah, it looks like Dammam. So, Dammam. Mumbai Dammam winter. Let's start again. December comes suddenly like Wuthering Heights, 1801, right into the second week. Morning starts like a shot. Chilled winds, not like Dammam. Winter crept there slowly as November weaned off the sticky clinginess of sea air. Mumbai winter rarely freezes, and I miss seeing smoke puffing out my mouth to mate with the coffee mate mist from my morning cup. I watch bisected people jog, walk, run from my grilled balcony. My lack of envy surprised my friends eager to partake in these sun rituals. Now we wave at each other, jailed behind the grilled windows as birds mock. Once again, Dammam has trained me for this pandemic. I have been in training since 1994, along with my mother, who lost her curiosity behind an abaya. Closed doors, French windows, wallpapered glass, forgotten kite seasons, indoor games to ward off an unapologetic sun, forgotten payan puri, memories of midnight mass, offering roses at St. Michael's Church, forgotten colors of holy. I only stopped making lists when I returned to Mumbai. My house had shrunk by then. I never thought of my body as growing. I was still in 6th grade. I spent hours in bed in the early 2000s and called it depression. It wasn't an excuse. I had recognized the Babadook, finally, and it retreated. So no drama there. except when my spine objected to my body from time to time. Then I would take impromptu trips to CST. There's a note that is Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, formerly Victoria Terminus, Mumbai Rail Station. That's what that is. Where were we? Down here. Impromptu trips to CST to fulfill my fantasies, my flaneur fantasies. I'd saunter, read the names of statues blessed with pigeon. I'd drink to Art Deco buildings and look for invisible books in odd little bookstores. Sometimes I'd eat at Irani restaurants and pretend that I was a merchant in a Merchant Ivory film. Mumbai offers you that. It's just the warmth of icy, chilled winds I miss. Damame. And that is Mumbai Damame Winter. And so it's an interesting journey of a poem. I mean, we get to sort of travel as this poem, travels from Damame to Mumbai. We sort of have a journey too, and it's a little hard to follow like the age and the setting of the speaker. I think that's the main thing that stands out first of all. Like I'm not sure who, because we get later in the poem, we get this sense of returning to Mumbai in the early 2000s. I spent hours in bed and being in sixth grade. It's sort of so when you get details like these that are like giving a certain time and place and age, I can't help it. Maybe other people can sort of let it go, but I just start constructing timelines in my head, trying to piece together like when we, where we are now versus when we're talking in the past, and it becomes sort of a distracting thing. So not knowing sort of where the speaker is situated now makes it sort of hard to follow along with this poem. That's it's sort of a winding journey, but you're not sure exactly where you are at all times, I think. So that's the first thing that sort of sticks out as a whole to me. I wonder if you could clarify that and sort of make a little more, just fit in a little bit better, so we don't have to sort of wonder and sort of piece together that timeline as we're going through the poem. But let's go look at line by line a little bit. So Mumbai Damame Winter. So the title, I think, it sets it up. Like we get this, it's serving a function, and it's unusual. So you'd see this in a table of contents, and you'd say, well, that's interesting. And then it sets up these two places. I had to look up Damame, but that's just my ignorance. December comes suddenly like Wuthering Heights, 1801. See, I don't know what this reference means to Wuthering Heights. Maybe people in the comments do. December comes suddenly like Wuthering Heights. Does the winter come suddenly in Wuthering Heights? I don't know. And it feels kind of out of place too. Like it's not really a tied to the speaker in any way that shows up. It's a bit of like a Chekhov's gun type issue where, if this is the first line, you expect Wuthering Heights to come up again. And I don't think it really does. And it's been so long since I read Wuthering Heights that I don't know what the reference is myself either. But that's sort of beside the point. Even if it was very clear to me what the reference to Wuthering Heights meant, it still doesn't show up again in the poem and seems like excess stuff that's unnecessary. So I wouldn't start here. But this works as an opening line, though. Right into the second week, morning starts like a shot. So, and we already know it's winter, so we know what it's the second week of. So I think that works better as an opening. Let's see. So Anita Lark says, this poem is full of color and atmosphere. The vernacular words are like veil, enticing me, but keeping me out. Interesting. See, I love the use of vernacular words. I don't know, maybe everybody has different tastes. I really like to be Googling as I'm reading poems. It's just take advantage of the age we live in. So I like to learn new words. There are several new words that I don't know here. And I look forward to looking them up. Peter O'Donohue asks, hi, Tim, this is great. How do we get a poem critiqued? And just so you know, this is, there's in the show notes, no matter where you're watching this, you will see a submittable link where you can submit poems for critique. You can submit 2. So Jamie O'Halloran Whitmar says Wuthering Heights is set in Yorkshire, a region in the north of England. The present-day action of the novel takes place from 1801 to 1802, with the retrospective plot events occurring over the previous 30 years. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm just not sure how that fits in. So unless this can serve some purpose later, I would probably cut that. Chilled winds. Let's keep going. Chilled winds, not like Demaim. Winter crept there slowly as November weaned off the sticky clinginess of sea air. I really like this description. That's good stuff. The so the morning starts like a shot. We get the wind, like very cinematic. If we use this as the opening, I think that works really well. So I like this, and then not like Demaim. So here we get situated a little bit. Just because we say not like Demaim, we know that we're in Mumbai now, and so we sort of get to feel our way into like the landscape of the poem where it's happening. And then winter crept there slowly as November weaned off the sticky cleanness of sea air. I really like that. November weaning off the sticky cleanness. It's a really good way to put that. Mumbai winter rarely freezes, and I miss seeing smoke puffing out my mouth to mate with coffee mate mist for my morning cup. I keep tripping over this section a little bit every time I read it. Puffing out, it might be the lack of the article. Puffing out of my mouth to mate with coffee. It's in the coffee mate. The mate with coffee mate is a little too clever, I'd say. It just kind of, pulls you out of the poem to, you could sort of feel the poet trying to impose some poetry in there with that repetition. And it sort of makes you forget that you're getting lost in this poem, which is what you want people to do, is get lost in your poem and forget that they're reading a poem on a page. So to mate with coffee mate mist, it's also tough to say with the M sounds. To mate with coffee mate mist from my morning cup, it's just a lot there. It's a mouthful. So I would pull back this and just let it be what it is, which is the image of the coffee and the mist from the morning coffee, which is something that you miss. So we're getting this nostalgia feeling, which works. I watch bisected people jog, walk, run from my grilled balcony. And here we use the word grill twice, too. And this might be like an American bias or something, but when I saw grilled balcony at first, I imagined a grill, like a barbecue grill on the balcony. And then later, as I read it more, I realized that it was just the grill pattern of the railing or whatever on the balcony. And then the grill appears again, like grilled windows. I don't have that connotation, but when I read this for some reason, and it could just be something that you don't have to worry about because it's just my, bias or whatever for what images pop up. But I imagine like a barbecue grill at first, which is something that is so. And since you're using grill twice, maybe find a different way to describe the bars on the balcony. Even a barred balcony or something might be a little better than grill, just because you use it twice again. My lack of envy surprised my friends, eager to partake in these sun rituals. So here we get into a little bit of an abstraction. Like, I think the poem was working really well up to this point in building the scene and getting that sort of nostalgic feel, and like I'm missing, I'm missing where I was, and this is why. And then we're telling that story of missing through image, which works. Then we get this: my lack of envy surprised my friends, eager to partake in these sun rituals. So they're eager to partake in these sun rituals. And then the envy, like there's sort of it's difficult to place these, envy of what? I'm not even sure. Envy of the nice weather, but you have the warmer weather. So I'm not sure where to put that envy. My friends eager to partake in these sun rituals. And sun rituals is such an abstract thing. Like, if we're going to have, is the sun ritual just coffee on the balcony, or is it more than that? And if it's more, I'd like some explaining. But I think, is it just coffee on the balcony in the sun in the winter because it's not too cold to do that? And we're still in Mumbai, right? See, I'm starting to get confused. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm getting a little lost at this section because it's a little vague. And so I guess the sun rituals are just having coffee on the balcony and seeing the people jog by. Now we wave at each other, jailed behind grilled windows, or maybe See, I don't know. Are we back in Mumbai there? Maybe we're back in Mumbai? Yeah, it's just hard to follow right there. Because now we wave to each other behind the windows, not on the balcony. So they go from grilled balcony to grilled windows. Sharon Ferrante says envy of the people jogging. And Kimberly Medina says envy of her friends who are outside. My lack of envy. Okay, so I watched bisected people jog one rock from my grilled balcony. My lack of envy surprised... I guess maybe the past tense is confusing me too. Surprised my friends, eager to partake in the sun rituals. Now we wave at each other, jailed behind grilled windows. I'm not going to belabor that anymore, but it's just a part where I get a little lost. Maybe other people don't, but we'll see. So, jailed behind grilled windows as birds mock once again. Demame has trained me for this pandemic. I have been in training since 1994, along with my brother who lost her curiosity behind an abaya. What is an abaya? That's one of those words I wanted to look up. Abaya is... it is a cloak, sometimes also called an abba, is a simple, loose overgarment, essentially a robe-like dress. So I love getting to learning new words like that as I read poems. Okay. Behind an abaya, closed doors, French windows, wallpapered glass, forgotten kite seasons, indoor games to ward off an unapologetic sun, forgotten pani puri. I don't know what that is either, but it's another thing I'd like to look up. And in context, I assume it's a food. Let's see. So this is a type of snack that originated in the Indian subcontinent and is one of the most common street foods in the Indian subcontinent. Okay, that's cool. Forgotten piney puri. Memories of midnight mass, offering roses. So we get, let's see, closed doors, French windows, wallpapered. So I'm still kind of lost as to where we are. Indoor games. So we're in the pandemic in Mumbai. Is that right? And I guess maybe the pani puri being forgotten makes me think we're somewhere else, but I guess it's forgotten because we're in a pandemic. Because Demame has trained me for this pandemic. So this is the stuff, the kite seasons in India. So we're just stuck inside, and that's what we're talking about too. But it's too hard to piece this together, in my opinion. Like, it's just the narrative isn't clear as to where we are at all times. There's great details, though. I love all the details. Memories of midnight mass, offering roses at St. Michael's Church. Forgotten colors of holy. I only stopped making lists. When I returned to Mumbai, my house had shrunk by then. I never thought of my body as growing. I was still in 6th grade. So now we get this like flashback to somewhere where I'm not sure where we're back in 6th grade in 2000. And so where were we with the midnight mass? Is this thinking about, thinking about, while sitting inside in the pandemic, we're thinking about what we're missing, and then that reminds us of what we're missing from Demame? Is that what's going on? It's just hard to follow this, it takes away from what's otherwise interesting. So the clarity here is the main issue, in my opinion. I never thought of my body as growing. I was still in 6th grade. I spent hours in bed in the early 2000s, no apostrophe there, and called it depression. It wasn't an excuse. I had recognized the Babadook. So we get the Babadook, which is a, ghostly type legend. Great movie. I love that movie, the Babadook. And but see, we had Wuthering Heights, then we go to the Babadook, which has nothing. It's a different reference, like a whole different sort of genre of literature, too. And it retreated, so no drama there. And we get this, so no drama there. And this seems like a huge story. I mean, the Babadook of depression is like a huge deal. I mean, and it's just sort of, we pass through it really quickly here. So like, tell this story. I don't know. So no drama there, except when my spine objected to my bed from time to time. Then I would take impromptu trips to CST to fulfill my fantasies. Once again, that's a train station. My flaneur fantasies. That's another thing. I don't even know how to say that. Let me look at that word too. Flaneur. And that is a French term meaning a stroller or loafer. So we're learning a lot of words today, at least I am. That's a French term meaning stroller or loafer, so or a lounger. But with more nuance, it's the act of strolling is flânerie. Interesting. I'd saunter, I'd read the names of statues blessed with pigeon. I'd drink the Art Deco buildings and look for invisible books in odd little stores. Sometimes I'd eat at Irani restaurants and pretend that I was a merchant in an ivory film. Mumbai offers you that. It's just the warmth of icy, chilled winds I miss. Daimam. So, I don't know, there's just a lot going on here. And there's just a lot of material that you could to work with. But the way it's told makes it difficult to follow, and it feels very sort of disjointed and jumping all over the place. I mean, we get a lot of different details on this big journey, and there's no real like cohesive way to hold it together. So that's the main thing I just work on, is finding a way to sort of tell the story in a way that's sort of smooth, so we know where we are at all times and what we're referring to. Let me read some of the comments, and we got to move on to the other poem. Let's see. Joyce was big into all things flaneur, as Peter O'Donoghue. James Langford points out an unapologetic son and blessed with pigeon are nice. There's a lot of nice details. I really like the details in this poem. I just wish I could connect with it more without being lost in what's going on. It seems like a big, expansive type story, because we get the whole Babadook, which appears very briefly. And then we get this bedridden phase, which we don't get the explanation for at all. And, I kind of like working through, I get what's going on. Being in the pandemic in Mumbai, we're locked in, missing all the things that we used to. And one of the things we miss, we realize, is the winters of Daimam. And that all sort of adds up, but it's so slow to piece that together that you can't really appreciate the poem. You're too busy trying to piece together what's going on. So telling that story in a way that where it all adds up is the main thing. Let's see. So Peter O'Donoghue says, what do people think of capital letters starting every line? I find it antiquated. As one Meg said, are you writing with a quill? That's interesting. I think different people have different opinions about that, and I don't care one way or the other. Some people, what it does is it emphasizes the line a little bit. So you have the sense that each line is its own thing. And it's more a piece by piece, line by line dropping of lines rather than sort of a smoother. That's the very subtle effect that it has. And some people like that like the effect of lines sort of almost thinking them as they stand on their own and being pieced together, kind of like climbing up rungs of a ladder or something. And then some people don't like that feeling and like it better the other way. And I think it's just a personal preference. Reading it doesn't really make a big difference to me. It's a very subtle effect, but it's something I don't think we've ever mentioned on this, in all the critiques of the week. So thanks for bringing that up. Let's see. Dick Westheimer says, I would say sticky cling rather than sticky clinginess. Better music for me in one of those spots. Dick Westheimer, there are too many unfamiliar words, terms, cultural reference for me to remain immersed. I like a few, but if I need to pause many times to integrate something new, I am dropped out of the poem. So I don't really have a problem with that personally, because, a lot of times you can tell what they are in context. Like I knew kind of I knew the one thing was a food. I knew the one thing was some kind of garment. And then I think you can read through the poem and just use contextual references to kind of know what it is. And then you can, if you want, you can look it up and learn what it actually is, which I like to do. I agree if it's too much and if you have to look up so much to understand it, then it's hard to stay immersed with a poem. But I don't think that's the case here. Let's see. The open dance ensemble says use stanzas to reflect shift in voice or subject as well as in location. That's another thing too. The poem is written in 3-line little stanzas, very short, and there's no change even as we shift through time and space, and some are memories and some are not. And it might make more sense to break it up into ways, break it up into stanzas that organize the narration that way. Anita Lyric says, rich odyssey, just need to polish down to central mission. Yeah. Open dance ensemble again. Problem is structure. Could use stanzas to indicate change in location. Voice. Oh, I read that. Voice topic. I merge shorter ones into longer, fewer ones. Yeah, I think so too. Lisa Allison points out he didn't start all lines with caps. Let me see. Is that true? Oh, yeah, here. There's some missing. That is the problem. A lot of times, and I'm not good at noticing this, but a lot of times when we send issues to the proofreader, somebody who has most of the lines, most of the first letters capitalized, will miss a whole string of them. And then, so the proofreader will have notes after notes after notes of, capitalize this or lowercase all the others. I think I just see one that's forgotten, but that happens a lot when you capitalize the first, because you're editing the poem, and probably, this was up here before, and then you forgot to, capitalize it when you moved it back down. So pay attention to that. I mean, some editors might be picky and care about stuff like that. I don't care, but maybe. Let's see. And Nate Jacobs says, rewrite to make this more clearly a comparison of experiences of winter between the two cities, perhaps in two halves, longer stanzas and longer lines. It's a great suggestion, Nate. I like that. Hege, Anita Jacobson Lepre says, there's so much to like in this poem, but I believe there's material for 2 poems in it. Yeah, I kind of think so too. That's another great comment. Thanks, Hege. It's, there's just so much here. I mean, there's the winter aspect, and there's the pandemic, and there's this whole depression in the Babadook, which is just fascinating if it were turned into what the story is. That's why I say, if you could read that, it says, tell this story. But I want to know what that is. So there are multiple poems in here, maybe, or maybe a long, sequence of poems that all intertwine together is another way to maybe think of this. But it's a lot of interesting material here. And Jamie O'Halloran Whitmarsh says, what is the poem's center? Where is it? Which gets back to the same thing. It's sort of has multiple centers, which is maybe the reason why it's hard to follow. And Nate Jacobs points out this too. I gloss over. I was thinking this too. That Nate Jacobs says that line, I only stopped making lists, is the key for me to the wistfulness of this poem. Add in just after I only just stopped making lists. And yeah, that does seem like the central part of the poem that we don't really understand either. It's right here. And why do we stop making lists? That really seems like the key question. And I think it has to do with this depression thing here, but it's really not explained in a way that we can follow well enough. Well, we're halfway. We've done almost a half an hour already. Let's do the other poem, which is much shorter. And if we go, I don't have anywhere to go today, so I can go a little bit over the normal hour. That's fine. This is again by Feby Joseph, Lent Birds. And at dawn, as they wait by on the waters, these snowy pier ornaments, these masters of fishing, their oblong bodies move in awkward grace as we leave a cold church on a cold Lent. In a sleepy, winter-chained sea town, Matthew and his fishing words ring like faint church bells, and my chocolate-longing son drinks in the display window of deserted sweet shops. I mentally covet a chicken sandwich, quickly, not quick enough, as my father pinches my ear. I dream of his roasted duck, that flavored our Easter table, and from my curried memory I succumb to temptations. We sit at a sea-staring table in a silent cafe and devour pies as another seabird leaves a sleeping boat to walk on water and snack on silvery fish. My son giggles through chocolate lips and says, Jesus must have been a crane. So I like this poem a lot, Lent Birds. And you can see how the positive, what works in the other poem, the longer poem, is retained here, but we know what's going on, and there's no like sense of confusion in where the narrative is moving. Like, we know it's Lent, we know where we are, and then we just get to enjoy all the details. So I think this poem works really well. And at dawn, they wait by on the waters. So I think this, because you don't do this kind of wordplay much, I think it's a distraction. So I wouldn't do that by on. If you wanted to point out that they're both waiting by and on, you could use repetition maybe, and that wouldn't throw you out of the poem. And at dawn they wait on the waters, by the waters, something like that. But with the either or thing, it makes you think that you're in some kind of evil or either or, like less normal speech type poem, and we're not. Everywhere else it's just a normal manner of speaking. These snowy pier ornaments, I love that. It's great descriptions here. These masters of fishing, their oblong bodies move in awkward grace. I do like that awkward grace too. This descriptions are really good. As we leave a cold church on a cold Lent, and a sleepy, and then here we get this winter thing, and the winter by the sea. There's really great, there aren't a lot of books or poems that talk about the cold wet of like a sea winter, and there's really great descriptions of that here. In a sleepy winter chained sea town. I don't know if you need sea, or there's something about, or maybe just town on the sea or something. There's something about the winter chained sea town that's a little too much, or sleepy winter chained. There's too many descriptions, too many adjectives or whatever. In a sleepy winter chained sea town, Matthew and his fishing words ring like faint church bells. I love that too, the faint church bells. And my chocolate longing son drinks in the display window of deserted sweet shops. I mentally covet a chicken sandwich. I don't know, mentally. That's another word you might want to cut. There's a little bit of clutter in the poem here. That's probably the only thing, like line by line, a little bit of clutter. Because I could just, if you're coveting something, isn't it automatically mentally? I covet a chicken sandwich quickly, not quick enough, as my dead father pinches my ear. I dream of his roasted duck that flavored our Easter table, and from my curried memory, I succumb to temptations. This language gets kind of religious here, and I wonder if this could be played up. Could you, I succumb to temptations. It starts to sound like a, one of the prayers or whatever you'd call it, where you're confessing. And maybe that could be brought out more. Like that's sort of an opportunity that doesn't get used, and maybe you could use that just in the rhythm and the use of language there, and extend that a little more. But we sit at a sea-staring table in a silent cafe and devour pies as another seabird leaves a sleeping boat to walk on water and snack on silvery fish. My son giggles through chocolate lips and says, Jesus must have been a crane. I wonder if you could cut these last two lines. I really love this ending. Could that be an ending? I don't know. I really like that there. As another seabird leaves a sleeping boat to walk on water. I think it's a great ending. The rest works too. And snack on silvery fish. My son giggles through chocolate lips and says, Jesus must have been a crane. That's a little too, I don't know, it's just not as strong as leaving on that last image. So I wonder if it works better that way with that ending. Those are my opinions about this poem. Let me see what Nate Jacob says Lent birds is a whole feeling. Yeah, this is a great poem. I really like it. Let's see. Kathy Gibbons likes the curried memory. I like that too. So much beauty in Lent birds, says Nate Jacob, and the feeling is more clearly put down for us. Exactly. So if you could make the the long poem feel like this, it would be a great poem too. It's just, we could follow this the whole way through. We know who's who and enough of what's going on. Like we get the scene and we don't leave the scene and jump around in time and space in the same way. So we get to really enjoy all the details, because there's great details in both of these poems. Nate Jacob says a comma after faint. Where's the faint? I'm sure he's right, and I just missed it. Well, I'm not going to look for it, but a comma after faint somewhere. Jenny Middleton says Sleeping Town sounds like something from a tourist website. Maybe leave out sleepy and go for a winter chained sea town. That's a good point too. Yeah, it does sound like some kind of advertising material there, just because it's a comma. It's a cliched type description of a town. So that's a good point. Nate Jacob says he devours pies, not chicken sandwiches. Disappointed. Fran Smith says, I think it does have religious analogies. Fasting, giving up chocolate for Lent, and the sea is an important theme as thoughts of Sea of Galilee. Yeah, the whole thing is, about giving up food for Lent and coveting. And, what I'm talking about when I say here, and from my cured memory, I succumb to temptations, there's that whole like ritualistic language that is used in religious speech. Biblical type language, type sort of use of repetition and a little bit of archaic phrasing and things like that are repeated. And I think that's something that could be taken advantage of. I succumb to temptations is like that, what is the one, I shall not, what is that? The dark waters and all that stuff. It's that same type of tone. And that could be pulled through to sort of heighten the feeling of that. It's something that could be used a little more, I think. But the whole thing is religious, which is great. It all works. And Bev Mundell Atherstone says, the walk on water makes the point of Jesus as a crane, so the last two lines are redundant. Yeah, I think I would definitely cut those two lines. Okay, and then we go over to YouTube. Peter O'Donohue says there's so much to like here. Let's see. Peter O'Donohue, I read Curried Memory, full of flavor, food, like a curry. But then I'm food obsessed. That's what I was thinking. A lot of alliteration in the last stanza. Lenten or Lent? Oh, this is Open Dance Ensemble. Lenten or Lent? Lent sounds like borrowed. Is this a double entendre? Lenten? I don't even know what Lenten means. I'm going to have to look that up too. My ignorance is always on display on the Critique of the Week. So Lenten is food appropriate to Lent? So it's an adjective? So like Lenten food? I didn't know that. So, So maybe are you talking about the title here? Lenten birds would make sense too. Or Lent does have, I don't know if the double entendre you're mentioning is the sense of it being borrowed too, if that plays into that in the title. I don't know. It's an interesting question. Let's see. I think we're going to move on to the next poem. But this was a good poem. And Jamie O'Halloran Whitmarsh has another good point, though. The long lines work well. And that's sort of maybe another thing that's missing in the earlier, longer poems. The short lines make it feel more disjointed, too. So maybe this line length is a better length for this author's style. Lord's Prayer, that's what I was thinking. Thanks, Lisa. I don't know why I can't think of things. And Psalm-like, says Bev. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Okay, so we're 10 minutes past the regular time, but let's do the other poem. This is C. O'Sullivan Green. And the first poem here is Shelter. And let me make sure one thing. Do I have... Let's see, whatever. Okay, so Shelter. Does a storm follow from sudden heavy winds in just enough time to leisurely cross a field? Or must one run, or run without pause? What kind of tree best diverts a rain that seems to be of a mind to start over antediluvian time? From what have I been shielded, with what? So seldom the phalanx of branches, oftener circumstance, and its easily spent fortunes, necessity giving sparse diction. I have a fine shelter I did not build, but that is mine. So it does not matter, such is the feeling, unsaid, unthought, but it is necessary to know, in knowing, prepare. That is a C. O'Sullivan Green with Shelter. And this is interesting. It's a poem that doesn't rely very much on imagery. And I don't know, do we feel a connection to it? Does a storm, let's read it again. Does a storm follow from sudden heavy winds in just enough time to leisurely cross a field? Or must one run, or run without pause? So at the beginning, I don't really have a sense of like who is in this play, in this like drama that we're about to see. There's a storm, because we get this a storm. It's very general way of writing, almost a passive voice. Does a storm follow from sudden heavy winds in just enough time to leisurely cross a field, or must one run, or run without pause? Like, who's the one, and what's the storm? It's very, very. There's a lot of distance in this poem. What kind of tree best averts a rain? What seems to be of a mind to start over antediluvian time? Let's see. So, okay. Yeah. So I really like the pacing and the way that the music of this. It's subtly but really good. But there's not a lot to connect with. So, antediluvian is like before the flood. That's a word that I don't have to look up, but people might not know. What kind of tree best averts a rain that seems to be of a mind to start over antediluvian time? From what have I been shielded? With what? So here we get the I for the first time halfway through the poem. Until then, we don't even know that there is an I in the poem. From what have I been shielded? With what? So seldom the phalanx of branches, oftener circumstance and its easily spent fortunes, necessity giving sparse diction. I have a fine shelter I did not build, but that it is mine. So once we get the I, do you feel the difference? Once the I comes in, then we know who we're talking. We have sort of a sense of the subject for the first time, and then we can start to connect. And so even though the poem is written in the same sort of generalizing voice, we still start to feel a connection as soon as we get the I. From what have I been shielded? So we know that the speaker's been shielded. So seldom the phalanx of branches. So even the phalanx of branches now, all of a sudden we imagine an I underneath the phalanx of branches. And we start to sort of get a sense of our place within the poem. So it starts to work much better once we have that I. Oftener circumstance and its easily spent fortunes, necessity giving sparse diction. So this is so vague. I don't know what to make of that. Easily spent fortunes, necessity making sparse diction. I mean, like, I don't know what that's referring to or what to make of it, really. But then we get this, I have a fine shelter I did not build, but that is mine. That's the kind of simple, very strong sentence that works, that has a lot of power to it, actually. I have a fine shelter I did not build, but that is mine. So it does not matter. Such is the feeling unsaid, unthought, but it is necessary to know, in knowing, prepare. So, this feels very like a Noah's Ark type metaphor working on, with the flood, the rain, the storm coming, and that is a metaphor for something. But we don't really know what. We don't really get, so prepare, have shelter. It's necessary to know, and in knowing, prepare. So there's just a lot to connect with. Let's see. So it does not matter. This is Nate Jacobs. So it does not matter seems to be the author's shrugging off the weight of the claims in this poem. Ironic, since writing a poem about it makes it seem to matter. Interesting. Let's see. That is true. Nate Jacobs also says shelter isn't quite hitting the mark. I think I see what it means, but I don't find it hitting the mark. Write it more personally about the I. Yeah, exactly. That was my exact where I was going with this. Was it's just so generalized that the connection and connection power that we want to get out of poems usually comes from specificity. It's really important to be generalizing and sort of distant and have a connection. Because the real magic of a poem is that we become the speaker. It's like the poet's breath is becoming our breath. We're becoming the speaker of the poem. And so when it's written in a very generalized way, you don't get to feel that connection with what's actually going on. And so that's kind of what's missing here, I think. We don't know the story or the situation at all. We can't really, other than this one little section which worked nicely, where we get the eye for first and we're shielded by by phalanx of branches. We get a bit to connect with there. And then we get some of the feeling too, but we don't really connect with it because we don't get the story. We don't get the specific details. And that's kind of what's missing here, I think. To make an otherwise interesting poem, I love the rhythm and the pacing of the way the poem moves down the page. It feels very, very well written as far as just the music of the language. It's just a matter of getting that connection. I mean, even the title, which we didn't mention yet, is just a perfect, like the whole poem. The title is just Shelter. It's just very general. You can't really get anything out of it except for this is what the poem is about. And that's kind of what we get from the whole poem too. We know what the poem is about, but we don't have a lot to take with us, when we go. So more specificity is what is missing here. And how to do that is a tough thing, but let's see. And the lyric says antediluvian time is chunky. And it's true. It is too. It sort of stands out. I think there was another word that stood out too, as sort of being a little out of place. But like words like these sort of inkhorn words, these long, less common words, they stand out. That's what they do. And if it's like the only one in the poem, if the register doesn't really match, that's maybe something to consider changing. Let's see. Yeah, so Dick Westheimer here says the poem reads so well, but feels like a beautiful box with confusing contents. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Good metaphor there, Dick. It does. It reads really well. It's fun. I'd happy to read it again just to say it out loud. There's a really nice rhythm to it and a nice use. It's just too general to connect with emotionally. Okay. So let's try the next poem by C. O'Sullivan Green and see if it's how one of the reasons why it's nice to do two poems, and we always try to do that, is because you can see if the same issue comes up. Is this going to have the same problem of being really well written but too general to connect with? So we'll see. From Troy to Lesbos. It dawned on me, yes, but the dawning was slow, threading with nimble diligence at the umbra, 20 years of waiting, of nightly unweaving. So the light does not come. The chair sits empty in the northern sky. Somewhere an Aegean isle calls to high warriors and nymphs who share its gaze. As I rummage interiors, index questions, shield my eyes, imagining the unscalable window of tall towers. Nobody, wind or charm can stay diffusive light, arriving after so long a journey. To thread the final eye, pull the bead of sun aloft, now undisguised, to wet our natures, hers and mine. From Troy to Lesbos. And I have the same feeling in this poem as I do in the other poem. I do, which is the sense of line and the music of language is really great. There are more details here, but there's still sort of a distance to it. It's hard to sort of put your finger on what exactly it is, but there's a way that it's written where it doesn't tell you. It's like holding the story back. It dawned on me, yes, but the dawning was slow. It dawned on me, yes, but the dawning was slow. That's just the whole sort of style in a nutshell is in this poem, though, because it's a beautiful, beautiful line. I love that. It dawned on me, yes, but the dawning was slow. It even creates a metaphoric image of the slowness of the dawn coming over and the sunrise, and beautifully paced and beautifully said, but I don't really know what it's about. And And so if we started to learn more about what was going on and more of the details around it, we could connect with it more. Either way, it's a great line, or 3 lines as it's written here. But the music of that is just wonderful. Threading the nimble diligence at the umbra. 20 years of waiting, of nightly unweaving. So the light. So why is it 20 years of waiting? So I imagine, wedding our natures is what we're waiting for, hers and mine. And so 20 years of waiting for that. So it's like this slow dawn arriving. So the light does not come. The chair sits empty in the northern sky. Threading with nimble diligence at the umbra. See, threading with nimble diligence. It sounds good, but I don't really know what it means. Threading with nimble diligence at the umbra. 20 years of waiting, of nightly unweaving. So the light does not come. The chair. See, I love the chair sits empty in the northern sky. There's just great lines in here. I just don't know where to put them. So I can know what's going on and have them have the power they deserve. Somewhere an Aegean isle calls to high warriors and nymphs. So we get this high warriors and nymphs, which apparently is Lesbos or Troy, who share its gaze as I rummage interiors, index questions, shield my eyes, imagining the unscalable windows of tall towers. I don't know. I mean, again, good images here, but where do I put them? Nobody, wind or charm can stay diffusive light arriving after so long a journey. So who's so long a journey? I mean, I guess it's hers and mine. The waiting is the journey. The journey is like a journey of waiting. Is that what's going on? After so long a journey, to thread the final eye. Again, to thread the final eye sounds great. I don't quite know what it means. Pull the bead of sun aloft. Thread the final eye. Let's see. Now undisguised, to wed our natures, hers and mine. So it feels like it almost connects and all makes sense with that hers and mine at the end. But we don't quite get it. Anita Larrick says, I gravitate to another title, us, instead of from Troy to Lesbos. Could you say us? Interesting. So are these two people waiting, for their natures to be wed, and one in Troy, one in Lesbos? Is that what's going on? I don't know. Open Dance Ensemble says opening might be astrological references, constellations in the sky. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I think that's the high warriors and nymphs who share its gaze as I rummage interiors. I'm not sure. Let's see. So Nate Jacob says, not going to lie, I read a lot of sexuality into this. Yeah, me too, for sure. Sharon Ferrante says, are they on a boat? I mean, this is a kind of a love poem. It's a poem of longing and love fulfilled at the end. And a lot of, it's definitely sexual too. And at least in how I read it. So it's definitely true. It's just, I don't know, there's like an abstraction. There's a distance to both of these two poems that's very similar. Jamie O'Halloran Whitmar says Cassiopeia's chair. The constellation is the chair in the northern sky. Ah, thank you for that reference, Jamie. So where we get to this chair, which I love that line. So the light does not come, the chair sits empty in the northern sky. Cassiopeia's chair. Is it ever not empty? Is it like this some other star sit in the chair? Is that the astrological thing? Or the moon sits in the chair? Is something like that happen? I don't know. Hege says, the poem feels like waves coming at you when you're on a beach, but I have a hard time grasping single images. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Let's see. It's just hard to piece together. Lisa Ellison says, I feel like we need to know the myth behind this to understand the poem. Yeah, I don't know. There's something, and it might just be knowing the myth that we're talking about. So maybe that needs to be explained. Maybe it could be explained in the title, or just with more detail, another stanza in the poem. The whole poem feels like it just has something. It feels like there's a key to unlock it, to make you have connection to it, and that key is sort of missing. And it's missing on purpose, like it's being withheld. Kimberly McNeil says the last stanza sounds intellectual. I can't figure out what she's saying. Nobody, wind or charm can stay diffusive light, arriving after so long a journey, to thread the final eye, pull the bead of sun aloft, now undisguised, to wet our natures, hers and mine. Peter O'Donoghue says maybe the mystery is the beauty. And Jeff Littlejohn says Homer, the Iliad. I mean, that's the Troy to Lesbos journey, I guess. Let's see what else people are saying. And Kathy Gibbons says, could this be a coming out poem? And I wonder that too. I mean, I thought so, but I'm not sure either. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's the kind of poem where you have guesses as to what it's about, and they're probably right, but it's hard to know for sure. Like, it's sort of just, there's this ambiguous sort of cloudiness, like a fogginess to it. And the images sort of drift in and out like figures in the fog, and you kind of know what you're looking at, but you kind of don't. And in a way that makes it just not have as much connection as it would if you could see more clearly what was going on. Sharon Friday says, are they on a boat? And the given says, perhaps. I didn't think of them as on a boat. Don't let me threading the nimble. I don't know. Okay, let's see. Any other comments? Jamie O'Halloran, Whitmarsh again says the Odyssey, Penelope's weaving is the myth that's going on here. So maybe it's just that I don't know. I don't get the reference to it. And maybe, I don't know. I mean, my default is to explain references as much as you can so that the poems can be accessible to people. And maybe it adds up a little more if you know, like somebody else mentioned, I can't remember who, that if you know the myths that it's talking about and referencing, then maybe the poem clicks together in a way that makes more sense. So Jamie again says, Troy was decimated after the war. It seems like the poet is imagining Penelope fed up with fending off suitors and ready to sail to Lesbos. That's interesting. So I could see... Diana Kessler says, wow, some absolutely fantastic lines and passages. Yeah, it is. And if we were looking at it, thinking about publishing this poem, that's kind of the discussion we would be having. Was we just say like these certain lines are just beautiful, and what do they add up to, and how much are readers going to be getting out of it? And it feels like it's just missing that connection, which is maybe sharing the myth and making it a little more clear. Maybe making I do like that this is sort of withheld till the end, the hers and mine. But maybe making that relationship a little more clear. Yeah, Nate Jacobs, again, puts it really well. This is ambiguous enough that where I do connect, I feel like maybe I shouldn't be jumping to that conclusion, which makes me feel lost. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's exactly what I was trying to articulate when I was talking about the fog thing, is that, it's ambiguous in a way that you're not sure if it's supposed to be ambiguous. And then when you do, you're not sure if you're making the right assumptions either. So it leaves the reader very unsettled, sort of not knowing how to respond to a poem. Peter O'Donoghue again says, Ted Hughes, and this covers all, said poets build houses and that it's up to the reader how they live in them. I love that, but I also appreciate a learned objectivity. Spartacus had to return. Spartacus Anagnosterus says Odysseus had to return from Troy to Ithaca to his wife Penelope in Ithaca, waiting for him for many years in Gad to face the suitors. Lesbos is very close to Lesbos. Tourists sometimes travel on boats to cross the sea. Lesbos is the birthplace of Sappho. So Bev Mundell, Atherstone, yes, Penelope is weaving during the day and unweaves each night what she weaved during the day. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. Let's see. So how does that play in? Oh, so this is just Penelope then, the threading the nimble diligence of that umbra, 20 years of waiting, of nightly unweaving. Oh, there we go. So the light does not come, the chair sits empty in the northern sky. And Circe and is it Circe or Circe? Circe and Calypso were nymphs. And Nate Jacob says, but I like my assumptions about it. Let's see. Over on YouTube. So Open Danson's novel says both poems are not about actual experience itself, but about reflections on that experience. This is the distance in both. Also, does title refer to classical legends or specific Greek islands? Does it provide a clue in the poem? Again, Open Dance Ensemble here. The reflections are immersed in allusions as well. Title could clarify. Constellations may also have names from Greek literature, which might connect the opening and ending. And Anita Larrick says, maybe it would work better as a song, where the rhythm and cadence hypnotize without content. That's interesting, too. I don't know. So I just more clarification and connection in this poem. And the other poem, too. And the shelter poem. There's just a little bit too much distance to connect, I think, with a reader who's a stranger and doesn't know what's going on. And again, I always think about this, but it's true that if you're reading poems in a book where you sort of know more context because they're just more poems and you can arrange them in a way that they fit together and you know where the poet's coming from a little more, there's a lot more freedom to play with sort of the ambiguities. But reading a poem, as you would here, just picking up a magazine and opening a poem or on the critique of the week, you don't get that. So there's a difference between publishing poems in magazines and publishing in a book. And that can always be a difference too. It's the kind of thing where sometimes there's poems that work in series. You have to take all three or whatever in a row to make it make sense. So that could be a factor as well, if these all sort of relate to each other, which maybe they do. Like maybe Shelter relates to the Troy to Lesbos poem. Anyway, they're both interesting, really great lines and great rhythms in both of these poems. It's just a matter of connecting to them, I think, as a reader who has to come at a poem cold. Oops, that's Lent Birds. But anyway, that is the critique of the week for today. We looked at a bunch of poems, and they're all really good, actually. There's a lot of great content here in both of these. There was the Shelter, and From Troy to Lesbos was C. O'Sullivan Green, and then the other one we had was Feby Joseph with Mumbai Damame Winter, and then Lent Birds, which Lent Birds I really like. Lent Birds worked really well. The other one was tough to follow, but had interesting content. So that was the 4 poems for today. And now let's do a quick drawing to see who the next poets are going to be. As always, I'm going to go over to random.org. And I took everybody who had submitted. It was like over 100 people are on the list right now. Again, you do this through if you go to submittable.com or rattle.submittable.com or our submissions page, however you find your way there. There's a form field, and you just submit poems there like you would any other submission, except for this, you get randomly chosen to be critiqued. And so we'll get to everybody eventually if you wait long enough. And we do 2 weeks, so that's 100 a year, 100 plus a year, 104 a year. So hopefully, we'll get to everybody who's submitted now within the year maybe, and then there'll be more people. It's always growing. So where is this list? Yeah, here's the list randomizer is what I use on over here on random.org. I always love random.org. There's a lot of uses for that. And I'll take the spreadsheet from the Excel exported spreadsheet from that form that Submittable provides. I will paste it into the list randomizer here. And then if you scroll down, you just paste it in, and then you say randomize. And there we go. So these are going to be the one pairing of the next. And how many Fridays are in November? 1, 2, 3, 4 Fridays in November. So we'll do the top 4, which are right here. Anetta Riley, Kostya Malakin, Jackie Chow, and Anam Tariq will be the first pairing, and then I'll go through the list and look for people too who make a good pair. So it's not like very similar poems, and we don't say the same thing for each poet. Let's see. So there we go. There's Nate Jacob down there at the very bottom. Sorry to miss you, Nate. It's 114 people on the list right now. So there you go. That is your critique of the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to the poets for providing these poems. Hope that our advice was helpful. That's always the point. We're just trying to help people become better writers, and it includes us too, because we get to think about how we're doing these things in our own work, and how we're encountering a poem, and what works for us and what doesn't helps us write better poems too. So that's the whole point. Hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for all your feedback. Now, a reminder before I go really quickly that this week the Rattlecast is a special Rattlecast. It's a different day because Sunday's Halloween, and we're doing a special Halloween episode on Saturday at the regular Sunday time, except it's Saturday, October 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Rattlecast number 116. And it's a special kick off your Halloween weekend kind of thing. We want to make sure that the kids can trick-or-treat and all that stuff, so I didn't want to do it on Sunday. But we're going to do it the night before, which is kind of perfect. And the open lines are going to be spooky open lines. So write a spooky poem with some kind of Halloween theme, kind of give us goosebumps if you can. That is your prompt for this week. And the guest this week is Ernest Hilbert, who I've been a fan of Ernest for a long time. He's a really great writer. He's a formal, he has 60 Sonnets as one of his books that I really enjoyed. I had no idea he had this book, Caligula, which is just full of sort of horror and, scary mythology references. As sort of the speaker moves through North American landscape, but it's full of poems about ghosts and Caligula and haunted houses and things. And so he's going to read poems from there and some new poems that are also on these themes. He's a big horror fan, even though I think this is the only book that sort of touches on those subjects. But really looking forward to that. It's going to be an hour with Ernest and then open lines for your scary poems. So hope you join us for Rattlecast number 116. Again, it is Saturday, October 30th, a day earlier than normal, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great Saturday in the meantime. Talk to you later. Bye.